Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. 6 hours to the second. That is when President Trump's tariff deadline for most of the world hits. But a last-minute phone call and a bit of a reprieve tonight from Mexico.
You know, we're taking in literally trillions of dollars for the country. This is making our country very rich and respected again.
All right, so who's getting tariffed with what and when? We're going to break it all down for you here in a moment. Plus, beyond the Ivies, the president's battle against higher education escalating today. Why Duke University is now up next. And when the president spoke today, he called an offsides on college football. I'll explain to you what that's all about. Also tonight, by the book, is Kamala Harris now laying the groundwork for a 2028 presidential campaign. It was back-to-back days with big announcements. And is it Russiagate, as it's being called by some, or is it just simply retribution? Why the Trump administration is now pointing the finger at Hillary Clinton. Is 2016 being relitigated all over again? We'll get into all that tonight, but first tonight here from The Hill, you remember this, from Liberation Day now to gut check time. Just 6 hours until it is trade deal or bust for most every country around the globe. Already today, President Trump revealing a phone call with Mexico's leader. That's our top trading partner, by the way. Trade barriers drop, the president says, while tariffs stay for now. It is all part of a 120-day whirlwind. The president setting tariffs, pulling them back, striking some deals, and saying higher rates are to come for those who don't want to play ball. So far, here's where things kind of stand. The White House announcing deals with several countries and the European Union, and there's 27 countries within the EU. You can see here how the tariffs shifted with trade agreements and how they all came together, at least with these countries. So this is Liberation Day, quote unquote, until now, as it relates to at least the UK, the EU, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia. And here's what I want you to take away from this. The blue dots here, these were the tariff rates back then on April 2nd, right? What is this? Vietnam was 45%. The president brought it back to 20 with a deal. This is Japan, South Korea. They were at 25%, brought them back to 15. That's basically the theme here. The UK, there wasn't anything. He struck the deal at 10%. But now the president says, if there isn't a deal, tariffs rise.
We're going to be setting a tariff for essentially the rest of the world. And that's what they're going to pay if they want to do business in the United States. Because you can't sit down and make 200 deals. I would say in the range of 15 to 20%.
But the future of trade with our top three partners is Mexico, Canada, and China. That's still very much a question tonight, and it is a very, very complicated negotiation with each one of those. Combined, they account for, you can see here, Mexico, number one, right, 15%, but add it all up, you're talking north of a third of all U.S. trade. Now, here's where things stand. The U.S. and China holding talks, but tariffs right now for China, 30%. Canada, a much different story. This was the post from President Trump earlier today, took to Truth Social, and he said that country's support for Palestinian statehood is now a factor. And today, as I mentioned, that big call with Mexico. Senator Roger Marshall here with me in a moment. So too is Mick Mulvaney. But we begin tonight with our Kelly Meyer live at the White House on this deadline and this decision. Kelly, from quote unquote Liberation Day until now.
Yeah, Blake, you had me feeling nostalgic. What a ride it's been from April 2nd until now. Tonight's the night, though. President Trump is set to sign an executive order to effectuate these rates. So to, put into play those new changes. To his credit, he did personalize a few of those deals, as you mentioned. That was his goal, to have personalized one-on-one deals with these countries. But for those he didn't get to, he's going to lay out that baseline rate. So the president tonight saying he's still making deals, though he wouldn't say exactly with who. And one person he did speak with today, the president of Mexico. So President Trump extended the deal with Mexico, which is our largest trading partner. The same deal that they had before, this will be extended for 90 days. So Mexico pays 25% fentanyl tariff, 25% tariff on cars, 50% tariff on steel, aluminum, and copper. And Mexico has agreed to terminate its non-trade tariff trade barriers. But one country he has yet to make that deal with, our neighbors to the north. Here's what Trump had to say about that just moments ago.
They have to pay a fair rate. It's all. It's very simple. They have been charging very, very high tariffs to our farmers, some over 200%. And they've been treating our farmers very badly. They've been treating our country very badly for years.
And Blake, just looked over the Marine sentries outside of the West Wing, 6 o'clock now here. So what do we have, 6 more hours until 12:01. So that's when it would snap back to the original rates back on Liberation Day if the president doesn't sign this executive order to make sure those new changes are put into play. And then that baseline rate for those countries he didn't get around to making a deal with, that he puts those into play, similar to what you said in that soundbite off the top,
yeah,
maybe
so
around 15 to 20%. We're going to wait and see what it might be.
Wait and see, right? We still don't know. Like, as I laid out there, the top trading partners and then the other nations that have struck a deal, Kelly, it's a big world out there. And I guess there's still a pretty big question mark tonight, right?
Absolutely. There is still a lot of time and a lot of time for these countries to, get through the line here to the president and make a deal, and some to call back. He said Canada did call, but he didn't call them back yet. I just checked with the White House official. No updates on Canada, no updates on China, though they have until August 12th. But you may see some updates coming through tonight, but he's not going to get that personalized deal with every single one of these countries or a letter out to every one of these countries. So that executive order tonight we're watching for will lay it all out more clearly for us, Blake.
Kelly Meyer, live on the North Lawn. Busy night still ahead. Kelly, thank you. Joining us now, the Republican senator from the state of Kansas, with us back here on the Hill once again. He is indeed Roger Marshall. Senator, thanks for being with us tonight. We're all sitting here sort of wondering what comes next in all of this. As I laid out there, it's been quite 120 days, I think is a fair way to put it. Is this stability now? Is there still whiplash? How do you view this?
Look, I think we're right where we thought we'd be right now. So 7 of our 10 top trade partners are pretty well buttoned up, ready to go. As your reporter mentioned earlier, we have till August the 12th to get China done. The only ones that aren't really finished right now, I believe, is maybe it's Thailand, and it's India's the big one that's still sitting out there as well. So China and India are the big ones. Taiwan's the third one. So just think about what President Trump has done here to box in China. Cambodia and Thailand today, in the recent week, the EU, the UK, Indonesia, Vietnam, South Korea, Japan, Australia. So he's really forcing China to the table so we can make a good deal. I think we're right where we thought we would be. And just want to back up for a second. Of all the consumer goods that America does, it's only 11% of what we intake right now. So a 10% of that is only a 1% increase.
But I mean, when you talk about prices, we got a reading today, core PCE, that's inflation. That's what the Federal Reserve looks at. It says that prices are going higher, slightly higher, but going higher. And here was the Fed Chair Jay Powell just the other day, yesterday, actually. I'll get your reaction.
Companies or retailers, sort of people who are upstream, institutions that are upstream from the consumer, are paying most of this for now. Consumers it's starting to show up in consumer prices, as you know, in the June report. We expect to see more of that. Expect to see more of it. How much more?
Well, this is why we call him Jay Too Late Powell. He's always too late. Back when the inflation of March of 2021, it took him 18 months to realize that inflation wasn't just
But
temporary.
if he would have cut, that would have made prices go even higher, right? So, I mean, that's sort of the pickle here.
No, I think that he overreacted, and he didn't understand that inflation was going to happen, so he was too late in raising the interest rates. But this is what he's missing here. Once again, I was trying to explain this, that we only import 11% of the goods we consume. Even if there's a 10% tariff on that, that would only amount to 10% of 11% is 1.1% increase. And of course, the manufacturers are going to eat a lot of that, the wholesalers as well. It's going to be a one-time hit. Look, the economy is growing 3%. Here we have Jay Powell. He's too late. If he would drop that interest rate a quarter point last week, a quarter point today, a half point in the future, this economy would really get cranked up and have more jobs for Americans.
What's your concern, Senator, for back home? Because we still don't have a finalized deal for Mexico, still don't have one for Canada, still don't have one for China. That is the first, second, and fourth main exporters in your home state of Kansas.
Yeah, but what we're missing here is that 99% of the things that we care about in Kansas are contained within the USMCA trade agreement. That if it's grown in Kansas, Mexico is going to take it. If it's grown in Mexico, Kansas is going to take it from them as well without any tariff. Look, the tariffs are going to remain for aluminum steel. If there's a car that's mostly made in China and sent to Mexico, we're going to tariff the heck out of that. So I think people are overreacting to what's going on in Mexico and Canada. China would love to get it done, realizing again, for the last 4 years, China's essentially imported nothing from Kansas. So we need to get that deal done long term again.
Roger Marshall is the Republican from Kansas with us tonight here on the Hill. Thanks for being back on once again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course. Joining me now, Mick Mulvaney, News Nation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff. Hello, sir.
Hello, Burman.
I laid out the deals there.
Yeah.
China, Canada, Mexico. I mean, those are three pretty big question marks still. What's sort of your overall read here right now? And did the president punt today on Mexico?
A couple different questions. Here's what I would have said to my friend, the senator, Rogers, a buddy of mine. He's like, look, you're absolutely right. The math is correct. If you've got a 10% tariff on 10% of the stuff that you buy, it's only a 1% increase in prices. But let's talk about the two different impacts of that. Number one, that's one additional percent of inflation. So you go from 2% to 3%, which is a big deal. Plus, it's not spread evenly over the economy. There'll be some things that aren't impacted at all because most of what we consume, we make here. But if you're talking about food that comes in from someplace else, you're talking about cars that come in from someplace else, that 1% is not going to be evenly distributed. Some stuff is going to get a lot more expensive.
You know Trump as well as anyone else. What's he doing here with Mexico, and what's he doing here with Canada?
He's negotiating. This is how he does it. It's the strategic ambiguity. I think he said they made some good progress with Mexico, not making very good progress with Canada. And I got to tell you, I don't think
he threw Palestinian statehood out there.
You know, and I don't know why they would do that. Maybe they figured, well, he cut a deal with the UK and they said it didn't hurt them, but I don't think the relationship is the same. I think the Canada thing could be a problem. I think, again, what did we talk about last night in the program? You don't want to be the last person in the game of musical chairs.
Okay, with Trump?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Every time he cuts a deal with somebody else, with another country, his leverage against you goes up because he doesn't need you as badly.
So look broad here for a second because the clock strikes midnight in 5 hours and 47 minutes, and then we get to August 1st.
Right.
Tariffs here to stay, essentially, right?
I think that's
for
correct.
the rest of the world. It's going to be, I don't know, somewhere around 15 to 20%.
Call it 10, 15%.
And then
right.
what happens from there?
It levels off, and we start to see what happens. We start to see whether or not prices go up. We start to see whether or not there's substitution, which is where people decide, you know what, I don't want to pay extra for the car that is tariffed. I'm going to try and find a car that is made here. And then if they start that substitution, does that mean that we open up more factories here to make more stuff? That's what we've talked about here from the very beginning. It's going to take time to see if that works or not.
All right, Mick Mulvaney, catch you later in the show.
I will be here.
You will be here. Thank you, sir.
Do we get to talk about the other trade deadline or not?
You can't tariff the players that were traded, right?
That's exactly right.
Mick had his
all this tariff
Mick had his Minnesota Twins imploded today. All right, still to come tonight here on the Hill. Brown, Duke, and Harvard all in the spotlight. Speaking about sports, by the way, President Trump today also pointing the finger at college football. How far will it go as the president tries to reshape universities? Plus this.
Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. 107 days.
2 days, two big announcements for the former Vice President Kamala Harris. What is her future here? And is this all about 2028 when the Hill returns? Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. We are back in 4 minutes on the other side of the break. See you then. All right, well, from the classroom to the field, President Trump today spotlighting his focus on American universities and, in this case as well, college football. While reintroducing a new council to focus on sports and fitness, the president saying that college football, in his words, is a mess. And he worries the current state of the game and all the money around it will sack other programs.
Women's sports are being totally decimated. We know that, Annika, you know, with this. It's all going into football and some to basketball, and everything else is being left behind. And women are being left behind.
And in the classroom or the research lab, the battle continues. How about these headlines? Just in the last day or so, Brown University reaching a deal with the White House to restore funding. The president today cheering in agreement, saying, quote, woke is officially dead at Brown. The government also contending that Harvard is not complying with its civil rights investigation into the school. And then you go down south to Duke. Federal funds, some of them frozen as the administration opens investigations into that university. Duke, of course, one of the best schools in this country, notably, though, not in the Ivy League. With me now, Linda Tran, former senior advisor to the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Erin McGuire is a Republican strategist, and she is the professor. Lauren Wright, associate research scholar and lecturer at Princeton University, NewsNation political contributor. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. Obviously, starting with the professor up there in Jersey. What's the end game here, Lauren? Because you have all these headlines, Brown, Duke, Harvard, and it doesn't sound like this is stopping anytime soon.
Oh, and I like both your panelists very much, Blake. Hey, guys, how are you doing? So, look, you know, the math on this is really simple. Americans hate elite universities. They don't understand why these places are taxpayer funded, and we have students destroying their own buildings and holding janitors hostage in some cases. And we've done a really bad job communicating the very valuable things that we do at schools like this, not to mention medical research, things that they affect their everyday lives. The other side of the equation is people love college sports. So to wrap this whole segment you have into a summary, that's the math on this. Trump is basically following public opinion. And even though his moves are very controversial at the schools that he's targeting, some of these things are items administrations have wanted to do for quite some time. And even faculty are on board with the common sense changes. Yeah.
Is he just following public opinion?
Yeah, I totally agree with Lauren on this. He's following what the polls are telling him, which is what he does best, let's be honest. He's been able to really tap into where the general populace feels like the issues matter, and he's done that time and time again, much to his benefit.
But I see your party or parts of it pushing back on this.
Absolutely. I mean, look,
should they rein that back?
Well, the challenge here is that we're painting everything with the same brush. Even when we talk about these agreements that are coming to fruition with these universities, they're all very different in very important ways. You know, some of them were specifically talking about things like changing the scores for transgender athletes. Some of them were about having an independent monitor come in. So they're all negotiating different ways back to what's most important to them, which is the research funding. From a Democratic perspective, I will say, we all believe there should be free speech, there should be independent thought on campuses, but I don't think anybody agrees that there should be vandalism.
I thought the comments that the president made today on college sports were fascinating because he's got Senator Tommy Tuberville, former college football coach, in his ear. He's got Nick Saban, the greatest of all time, in his ear. And there is unquestionably, Erin, a moment right now where they're trying to figure out college sports. And the position that the president took today wasn't about football per se. It was about saving women's sports as a result of this.
Well, no one's worried about football being saved in college athletics. But welcome
money flying all over the place.
Right, yeah. I mean, welcome to the conundrum that Charlie Baker faces at the NCAA all of the time. One, the NCAA is a deeply flawed institution. Everybody can agree upon that.
Has been for a while.
And it has been for a very long time, well ahead of Charlie's tenure there. However, this is an institution that has failed to help college athletes succeed in a way that is universally beneficial to the college athletics totality. Right. And so when you're looking at NIL, they just keep sitting back, kind of the way that social media companies do. They're like, we want somebody else to step in and tell us how to do this because we don't know what we're doing. So right now, especially football, because that is the moneymaker in college sports. Yes, believe me, I went to the University of Connecticut. We have won 5 national championships in the last 25 years in our basketball program.
Basketball, yes, there you
go.
But
basketball arenas aren't as big as football stadiums, right? There is a clear monetary difference, but the amount of money and the looseness of the money that's flying around will hinder other sports. And women athletics have always been behind. But to be fair, their ratings aren't there either. Right. So when there's more support for a sport, there's more money put into it. So this is the tough balance that the NCAA consistently has to fight.
Lauren, last word to you, because he framed this today, and I thought it was fascinating around the issue involving women's sports.
Well, look, yeah, I mean, this is an 80-20 issue, as Republicans love to say. It's something that they successfully made salient in 2024, and it continues to be a losing issue for Democrats when they speak loudly about it. The one thing I want everyone to think about is the fact that just a few years ago, universities were telling the world that diversity, equity, inclusion were core to the education mission, that we could not do our jobs properly as universities if we were not focused on these issues. But now they're fine, you know, signing these checks and settling with the administration. So either that wasn't true in the first place, but you know, we really need to think about these things.
She is a professor at Princeton, so we will think about it indeed. Lauren Wright, thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Linda, Aaron, see you back here later in a bit. All right, still much more ahead tonight. Here on the Hill, is New York City ready for a socialist Democrat? Brand new numbers out on Zohran Mamdani. The man behind the numbers, Scott Traynor, Data Science Director, DDHQ, with me on the other side. Great.
We must live in the spirit of Officer Islam. And I want to say thank you to the men and women of the New York City Police Department in general, but specifically to the men and women of SRG.
That, of course, the New York City Mayor Eric Adams today delivering remarks during the funeral for the fallen New York City police officer from Monday's shooting there in Midtown Manhattan. That police officer, Officer Islam, was off duty. Mayor Adams paid tribute alongside his family, friends, members of the NYPD, the New York Governor, Kathy Hochul, the New York City Democratic mayoral candidate, Zohran Mamdani, also in attendance at that funeral service. The tragedy comes as the New York City mayoral election, which is now gaining all sorts of national attention just 3 months away, putting the spotlight on all of the candidates here and the policies they seek to implement if elected. For example, Mamdani has repeatedly called to disfund and dismantle the New York Police Department. But in light of Monday's shooting, Mamdani now walking that back.
I've been very clear about my view of public safety and the critical role that police have in creating that. My statements in 2020 were ones made amidst a frustration that many New Yorkers held at the murder of George Floyd.
Tonight, new polling from our partners at Decision Desk HQ showing the current state of the race. He is the man behind the numbers. Scott Traynor, Data Science Director over at DDHQ. This is the race here. Mamdani, Cuomo, Adams, Sliwa, and for those folks who thought you only...
we didn't think we were going to say a month ago.
I was going to say, if people think you only do these averages on even-numbered years, nope, because this is a big one. Let's show it. These are the top lines here, and it is good news for the man on the left there.
Yeah, 38%. That's roughly what he got in the first round of the primary. So what this polling shows us, and this is based off of 10 public polls, so this isn't one, this is an average, which are a little bit more accurate. He's been able to maintain what he got in the primary, which is good news if you're Mamdani campaign. All
right, let's show how this has sort of moved over time, because this obviously flipped in the middle of, or at the start of this summer. This is Mamdani here, and you can see it was Andrew Cuomo at the top, and then obviously, when they had the Democratic primary.
The roller coaster, right? The back and forth. And I think that's the important part. If you're looking at trends, which is what we do all day, Mamdani's got the uptrend, Cuomo's got the downtrend. I think what's interesting is Sliwa and Adams, right? The current mayor is fighting it out for third.
With Eric Adams. He's running as an independent. Let's show Kalshi, because you and I love this stuff. Those are the polling averages. This is what the betting market is saying. And they're saying that this is a runaway. When people are putting their money where their mouth is, 79% are picking Mamdani as the winner. You know, he came out in 2020, Scott, and said the NYPD was racist. His words, racist. Yesterday was like, psych, just kidding. Does any of that matter?
We're about to find out. Look, he said that yesterday. None of the polls you saw took into account some of these things. We're going to have at least one, maybe more epic debates between these folks. And we know Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams are going to make him explain that. So I think what you see with the 79%, you see a strong polling from Mamdani. What we don't see yet from the 79% is these guys get to run a campaign over the next 90 days.
All right. You'll be here for it all. Scott Traynor, Data Science Director over at DDHQ. Thanks, bud. Appreciate it. Meantime, 107 Days. That is the title of former Vice President Kamala Harris's upcoming memoir. It will offer a behind-the-scenes look at her presidential campaign, about 3.5 months.
In writing this book, one truth kept coming back to me. Sometimes the fight takes a while, but I remain full of hope, and I remain clear-eyed. I will never stop fighting to make our country reflect the very best of its ideals.
The memoir set to be published September 23rd. The announcement comes one day after the former vice president, former presidential candidate, opted out of California's governor's race, her home state, potentially leaving the door open for a 2020 presidential bid. And just a little while ago, President Trump asked about all this.
I wouldn't call her a skilled politician. Would you? I don't know. I think I'm going to buy it. I'd love to see it. No. I'd find it. Look, I find everything in politics interesting. I sort of enjoy politics.
That's already got Mick Mulvaney laughing. Back with me now, News Nation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff. And look who's with us also, our guy Dan Cannon, who was the former battleground states director for the Biden and Harris campaigns.
Only at Trump's absurdity, but of course.
All right, let's start with Dan, because you know the vice president well. You ran her 7 battleground states. She comes out yesterday and says, I'm not running for governor. Oh, wow. Big news, obviously. And then today, the book, right? So you get the 1-2. What happens when you write a book? You go on out and you promote the book. And where might you promote the book? Maybe in a state like South Carolina, or say New Hampshire, or say Iowa. What I'm getting at is this leading to 2028?
Well, I don't know. She's got a long time to make that decision. I think the challenge she's going to have, Blake, and this is true for any vice president that runs and loses a tough, close race. And by the way, the book is a good way to remind folks that this was a very, very close race at the end of the day, 1.5 percentage points. But she's got to run and get a platform back together in a way that you don't have the opportunity if you're not a governor or a U.S. senator, or Secretary Clinton lost a tough primary to Barack Obama, but then was a U.S. senator and then Secretary of State, gave her the platform for 2016.
You have to stay relevant.
Right, and she's got to overcome that. The book is part of that. But I do think the book is a great step for her. There are stories here that should be told. This is a fascinating campaign. I didn't feel it was fascinating as part of it. It was hard. But there's so many great moments in that transition that were really unique and unprecedented. And those stories should be told and be out there.
Do you expect her to talk about Joe Biden, and how so?
I don't really. The way she's been framing this book, and from what I understand from those that have seen the excerpts and how it's going, it's a personal story about her 107 days, her story on the campaign trail, not her time as VP or in the White House, but rather how she prosecuted that campaign.
So is that kind of like her out a little bit?
Well, maybe, but I think people do want to hear about that. I mean, Donald Trump talks about the campaign all the time, and people have talked about Joe Biden all the time on the campaign trail. From my perspective, selfishly, I think that what happened in those days from Biden dropping out to turning it to Harris, and then very quickly pivoting from, she was going to do a small event at the Polish Club in Milwaukee on Tuesday, the day after the Biden dropped out. And in 36 hours, we had to say, well, that's not going to fly for the first public event. Let's completely change the game plan. Those kind of stories are gold, and I think people should hear and talk about it.
I'm going to read the book just to see if Cannon
I was just about to ask. That was my next question.
I hope not.
Cannon, are you in the book?
I hope not.
No, you do the DC breeze, which is you go to the back to see if you're in the bibliography at all.
Control F.
So
there you go.
Look, on 2028, I don't pretend to understand Democrats, and I always laugh when Democrats give Republicans advice and Republicans give Democrats advice, because we don't listen to each other when it comes to that kind of stuff. But here's sort of what I feel about this, is that I know Republicans who are excited about J.D. Vance. I know Republicans who are excited about Marco Rubio. I know Republicans who are excited about Ted Cruz. Go down the list. You talk to any Republicans, they've got their horse for 2028, or they got a couple folks. I don't know any Democrats who are saying, you know what, I really can't wait for Kamala Harris to go out and run for president again.
Is it there, or
I just don't get that feeling. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know that there's a clamoring for any particular candidate right now, to be honest, but I will say this. I'm not sure it's going to be her. I'm not sure that she's going to run. She has time to make that decision, and she will, I think, evaluate this as she goes forward with a good team around her. But I will say, this is numerically unimpeachable. When she entered the race, we saw a surge of volunteer support. We went to 1 million volunteers by the end of the campaign, knocked 20 million doors, had 100,000 events powered by volunteers. She had a tremendous grassroots, small dollar donor energy. Those things are real, and she'll look at those lists and that campaign
mechanics. If the
mechanics.
Democrats had replaced Biden with Gavin Newsom, would you not have seen the same thing?
Perhaps, but she still did that, and she executed it, and that's worth something. They will take a look at that and evaluate it as she considers her options.
All right. Dan Cannon, Mick Mulvaney, thanks, guys. See you
Blake.
back on the other side of the break. By the way, speaking of Democrats from the past, how about this? Why is Hillary Clinton in the news today?
This is further evidence that Hillary Clinton approved the Russia hoax against President Trump. Her campaign financed it.
What the White House is saying today, you heard in part of it. What the Trump administration is saying today about the president's former political rival. Is Russiagate real or is it retribution? Other side.
Thank you for making News Nation America's fastest growing cable network in all of television. Let's get after it. The place where left and right come to be reasonable. News Nation, news for all Americans.
All right, so is it lock her up all over again? Republicans have their eye on, yet again, another opponent who they have already beaten politically. Now, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, releasing a 29-page declassified memo. It alleges that then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton okayed a plan to, quote, smear her opponent, of course, at the time, Donald Trump, with fabricated claims of Russia collusion. The memos allegedly obtained by the Obama administration revealed, quote, confidential conversations, end quote, between leaders of the Democratic National Committee and the billionaire George Soros' Open Society Foundations to hatch a plan. Now, to raise the theme of Putin support for Trump and sway public opinion to equate the Kremlin's campaign with the hacking of the 2016 election, the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt asked about all this today.
This is further evidence that Hillary Clinton approved the Russia hoax against President Trump. Her campaign financed it. Again, she approved it. And the FBI and the CIA were both weaponized to, as our director of CIA has said, accelerate this hoax. The president wants to see justice served.
Now, critics say it's all just another distraction at a time when the president, or at least his administration, might be saying, look here, don't look there, with the Jeffrey Epstein story not going away. So, Russiagate real or retribution? And an unnecessary look in the rearview mirror. Full panel here with me now. Mick Mulvaney, you know him already. Linda Tran, former senior advisor to the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Aaron McGuire is a Republican strategist. Dan Cannon back with me again. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. I'm going to start with Aaron on this one. What are Republicans doing here?
Well, when it comes to political misgivings that the president has, he seems to keep score better than I do. He holds a grudge like I do a handbag every day of my life. And this is not one he's letting go. Thank you, Mick.
Yeah, I laughed.
And this is one he's not going to let go of. And yes, it's not groundbreaking that a candidate would be smeared by their opponent and lied about by their opponent, and certainly by Hillary Clinton. None of this shocks me. If there was anything nefarious or illegal done, yes, that should be investigated. However, for Republicans, for the MAGA base that really supports Trump, this is just more red meat to say we knew it all along, it was total corruption and they were wrong the whole time, they tried to rig it, so you're just fanning more flames.
Yeah, I just find it really hard to imagine that the base that he cares about, who are really riled up about the Epstein files, are going to suddenly be like, oh, Hillary Clinton, yeah, right, forget about the Epstein files. And so I think it's really interesting. I'm scratching my head about why this actually is newsy, and also point back to the fact that
I guess there's a question there of, did this escalate to the point of the federal government taking action on behalf of a political candidate?
Well, I would say that what we saw and what was, quote, revealed so far looks like it was a conversation between the Soros Foundation and some members of the DNC. I don't know that we've seen anything that rises to that level.
This is after the election. I mean, just to go back for a second, there's a 1,000-page Senate intelligence report chaired by Republicans, Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham, agreeing that Russia attempted to interfere in the election, and that happened. Now there's a disagreement among many about whether the Trump campaign contacted Russia in a way they should not have or was part of that. But that's canon. That is done.
This is
all trying to conflate this here.
That's the crux of it, though, for Trump, though, is what you were saying, is that a lot of the public was led to believe under Russiagate that Russia had meddled and influenced the election in his favor and actually changed the outcome.
And the Mueller
report, can you imagine winning president of the United States and everybody
But the
runs
Mueller
around
report
saying
said
they
very
didn't get
clearly,
it?
I just want to make this quick point. The Mueller report said very clearly that they didn't have evidence one way or the other on that point, but it was a fair question to ask. And now he's trying to conflate all of this. And to your point, I agree with you, Aaron. This is about red meat stuff. And it is about distracting from the fact that he's openly having a conversation about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, who's a sex predator who has 1,000 victims herself.
So, Vic, here's how I want to tee you up, because there's the conversation of trying to smear your political candidate about a an issue. Cue up the first soundbite. Basically, the idea of trying to smear your political opponent, right? Roll it.
Our president has finally released a birth certificate. Now, we have to look at it. We have to see, is it real? Is it proper?
I mean, Donald Trump was doing all that stuff to Barack Obama, suggested he was from Kenya, didn't believe he was a natural-born citizen, said Obama was a Muslim.
Let's go around the horn. It's newsy because there's new documents out today. These documents are just declassified. You're right. It's not newsy for a politician to be smearing another politician. They do it all.
I just showed you video.
The issue is whether or not there was a government contact, and I think it's a fair question to ask. The stuff that came out today is actually from before the election. It was dated July of 2016. The reports you talk about are afterwards. The investigation is afterwards, but I think that's why we're talking about it. I don't think there's a story here unless there's some government intervention.
Unless it moved to that level.
It's a big story.
Do you think that your party, and by the way, this is involved with like the top intelligence, I know this was put up on the Hill, but do you think your party should be looking back 10 years, 9 years?
Linda would have us say it's not going to distract from Epstein. And she's right, okay? But that doesn't mean it's still not of interest to these folks. They can say, you know what? I'm fascinated by this. I want to know about this. Oh, and by the way, I still want to see the Epstein files. I think voters, the base, can walk and chew gum at the same time. They want to know what's going on. Does it help him politically? You know, look, it's part of the overall transparency. If I was going to make the case, it would be, Mr. President, this is why you need to release the Epstein stuff. This is what your base wants to know. We want to know if we can trust our government or not.
Because that's the big question, right? The part of this, when the recent stuff has come out, Obama and them wanting to relook at this and have another investigation in it to see if there were more close ties to Russia in the Trump campaign, they kept this going on the Democrat side, even after the election, to try to find other intel sources to see if they could tie it together. They kept this going. So yeah, I'm not surprised that Donald Trump is upset about this and that he won't let it go, because like I said, I hold grudges deeply, and I have many I could air here like Festivus.
The last point I make is to mix into Aaron's. It is newsy for me for a very different reason. This is all part of the Trump administration's cover-up of what's happening with Epstein, clearly. Now, I'm not alleging any particular conduct that he's made because we don't have any evidence of that. But it's evident to everybody he doesn't want this stuff released. He feels at least politically implicated, if not otherwise implicated. And everything they're doing, from Tulsi Gabbard fabricating things. John Bolton, not exactly a friend of the Obamas or Clintons, said Tulsi Gabbard's manufacturing evidence and drawing conclusions that are crazy. When the D&I director is doing that at your behest to solve a political problem, that's a scandal.
If that's the purpose, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with that.
I just don't think anybody's going to let the Epstein thing go. At this point, both parties have made too big of an issue of it now.
I agree.
In the last couple of weeks.
Got to leave it there. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Still to come tonight here on the Hill. Remember that whole like Trump and Musk and will they ever talk again and will he pull the government contracts and that whole narrative, right? We had some video today, and I'm going to explain to you on the other side of the break why you should look past all of that. My take on the other side of the break. And Jesse Weber filling in for Elizabeth Vargas tonight. Jesse will be talking to the Incredible Hulk about, who's he talking to? Lou Ferrigno. I was about that. I was fascinated with Bryson DeChambeau at the White House. That's coming up. I just want to make sure I read the prompter right there. My take and what's trending other side of the break as these fine folks laugh at me in the commercial. All right, if you're just getting home tonight, catching up on your day, here's some of what's trending on thehill.com right now. This is the big story, as what the president is going to do potentially going forward. His tariff deadline hits midnight tonight. He announced a big phone call today with Mexico, and we'll learn in the upcoming hours what the tariff rates could be for most of the countries all around the globe. And then there's this as well. The president today signing an executive order on a sports council. He had some of the biggest names in all of sports over at the White House today, and he actually had a focus on college football and college sports and sort of all the issues with money and the like there with college football today. And then, speaking of money, the press secretary today detailed the $200 million ballroom plan over at the White House. More changes over at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If you'd like to check out those stories and more, all you have to do is scan that QR code on your screen or head on over to thehill.com. All right, time for my take now. And would you look at this? SpaceX's Falcon 9 crew set to take off from the Kennedy Space Center earlier today for the International Space Station, but just under a minute before launch, this happened.
So as you've heard over the nets, we did just have a hold called at the T-minus 1 minute mark.
And that hold due to weather.
They'll give it another go tomorrow, and it'll be the 11th joint NASA-SpaceX mission like the one that you're looking at since 2020, but also the first since Musk's SpaceX executed that mission to rescue the stranded astronauts. Remember that back in March? In that exact same week, by the way, the Trump-Musk relationship was all sorts of rosy, of course, so a lot could clearly happen in 4 months. But here's what this shows today, especially among all the conversation on what the Musk-Trump fallout means for them, the government, the country, etc. Yes, President Trump, by far and away, the most powerful person on this planet. But this mission, which involves leaving the planet, also goes to show just how much the government still needs one of Musk's biggest companies. A reminder that for all the talk about what will happen with Musk and his contracts, that is rocket fuel for speculation. Whereas today and tomorrow, we witnessed some of the reality. I thank you so much for watching tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. Over now to Jesse.